Chiro Gold interview here, and today we're going to continue our journey through the 33 principles. And as always, we're thrilled to have Dr. Joe with us, the expert on these matters of 33 principles. And today we're going to pick up on principle 7. And last time we spent we had a good conversation on slipping and checking. I want to make one last comment about that. So I think that was such an important thing to go over. And I was just thinking about this, and again, how important it is, because we're all going to slip up from time to time. It's just, we're human beings. We're going to make mistakes in our language and present things maybe in a way we don't really want to. But once again, that's okay. That's going to happen. But if we don't have knowledge of the philosophy of chiropractic to know when we have slipped up, well, we're just going to keep stumbling and eventually fall flat on our face. So we have to have the ability to go, oh, you know what? I didn't mean to say it like that, or I could have said that better, and we can check ourselves and get ourselves back on course. And that's, I think, if we were to summarize, one of the big reasons why we're doing videos like this is just that, to help chiropractors to know, first of all, that they have slipped up, and then when they have slipped up, to be able to check themselves to get themselves back on course. And so just wanted to touch on our video last time, and I think it's worth, if you haven't seen it, of course, go back and watch that or watch it again. And so today we'll work on helping to be better at checking ourselves. And as we get to principle 7 here, and this is why there's a lot of reasons why I love and respect you, Joe, but one of the reasons is that in your books, you don't just automatically go, oh, okay, well, BJ said that, or Steven said this, and so therefore we can't question it. And some chiropractors do that. They think that everything that those guys said is completely perfect, it's infallible, it's the law, we can't challenge it, and if we do, well, you're not a very good chiropractor. And of course, that's craziness. And so what I love here, and I'm looking right now at Joe's book here, the commentary on the Green books, and this is, of course, the Stevenson's book. And on principle 7, you make some great points here in your book to, I think, maybe check Stevenson and to help him, because I think he might have slipped up a little bit in his wording here when he's describing principle 7. And let me just read what principle 7 is, and then, Joe, you can go into helping to check Stevenson here. So principle 7 is the amount of intelligence in matter. And it says, the amount of intelligence for any given unit of matter is always 100% and is always proportional to its requirements. So there's some issues here that we need to address to maybe clear this up a little bit more so that we don't get off course here, you might say. And in your book, I'll just kind of set up the viewers here who maybe don't have this with them. In his book, Dr. Joe goes on to address and comment on this principle. And what he writes here is this. He writes about how, basically, he says, I've always felt that when Stevenson, says amount, he means 100%. However, I believe the author is inferring by the use of the term proportional, in quotes from the principle, that more intelligence is needed in an elephant than in an ant. The fact is, there is no more intelligence in one or the other. Being a non-material entity, intelligence cannot have an amount. The only difference between the elephant and the ant is the amount of matter and its configuration. Stevenson would maintain that there is more intelligence in the elephant. In that case, the baby would have less innate intelligence than an adult, although exactly what is needed. So I think that's right there, we've got the crutch to go. So let's maybe get some more of your thoughts on that and the whole idea here of principle number 7.
Yeah, I think we're really having to go back to the fact that Stevenson hasn't talked about innate intelligence yet. He's talking about universal intelligence. But so it can be applied to universal intelligence. And I think that we need to look at it from that perspective, and therefore we would probably look at it a little bit differently the principle of the laws, or the principle of gravity, is one that exists, and that's what he's really talking about. If he's talking about principles, and we can look at that law and say, yeah, that law is correct. The principle is the attraction of masses. One mass is attracted to another, and we look at the law of gravity and say, yeah, when we have gravity, we have the attraction of masses, and of course we know that from the walking on the moon, that the law is different on the moon than it is on the earth. And I don't know exactly what the figures are now. I know that an object falls to the earth at 32 feet per second. That's what it has on the earth. I don't know. Maybe I never learned what it was on the moon. I was born before that time. Before they walked on the moon, but I think they have figured it out. But at any rate,
well, I was born after that. I don't know what it is either, so I don't have an excuse.
Okay, well, I'm sure maybe one of our viewers could apprise us of that, because I'm sure they had it somewhere what it was, and we saw it demonstrated on the moon when the guy was walking on, when one of the astronauts was walking on the moon. He was kind of bouncing along there at a different rate. So we know that there is that principle, that law, and I think that's what Stevenson is talking about. Not necessarily the figures, because they do change with the size and the mass of the object falling to the earth, or trying to walk on the moon. It is different. But the principle is there. The principle of attraction of masses, and that's always 100%. The attraction of mass is 100%. Depending upon the configuration of the matter, will determine whether that demonstrates at 32 feet per second, or whether it's demonstrated at something else. But the principle of the law is consistent, always 100%. When we throw a baseball, and playing baseball, when we throw the ball, we know that it's going to come down eventually, depending on how strong your arm is, and what kind of matter you have, and what you're throwing, is going to determine whether it's going to come down, or what rate it's going to come down, or how it's going to be manifested. But the law is still the same. I think when they designed baseballs, we realized that at one time they kind of changed the size or the weight, or the size of the baseball.
Yeah.
And I started hitting a lot more home runs.
Nice.
And I think they had to. That's why it's kind of strange to kind of compare a Babe Ruth with a hitter of today, because they were hitting a ball that may have traveled a little further before it hit the stands, or hit the hit the earth.
And a few of the other players these days are taking some other supplements, you might say, that help them.
Right. That's true too. Their matter, they're changing their matter, rather than the matter of the ball.
Yeah, exactly.
But the matter of the ball has changed, and so a lot of things have changed. I think that when we talk about this principle, we're talking about something that's consistent. Now, it may be manifested in a different manner. My wife grew up as a child with a lot of rabbits around the house, because her father was a professional magician.
Yeah.
And so, but he did more in the way of card tricks and deceptive tricks. And in fact, he used to, when he first went into professionally into the business of magic. He called himself the gay deceiver, and then he had to change that because the term had a different connotation as time went on, and has a different connotation now than it did then. But he was really good, really, really, really good, and like I say, he was a professional, and
Yeah.
he actually he worked for a couple of large companies where he would do demonstrations to demonstrating his magic skills, which was mostly with cards and
Yeah.
and coins and things like that. But it was deception, and that was what he was really good at.
Yeah. Sleight
Talking to
of hand.
he was good at sleight of hand, and the main thing he had to do, which I find out from watching him so often, because we'd invite him down to our house, and he would entertain all the kids in the neighborhood, and he was really good, and he would entertain the parents would come in, and they would all sit around my kitchen table and watch my father-in-law do his card tricks. But the trick was deception, and he had a tremendous gift of gab, and that was he was able to deceive people by taking their mind off of watching
Distract them.
and what was happening. Yeah, and that was part of his gift, was the ability to do that. And in fact, he had no time for the real big magicians, because he felt they were just hucksters, and I think some of it was because they were getting paid thousands and thousands of bucks, and he was just kind of struggling along
Sure.
with his tricks. So that may have been part of it too. But we see how, what was one guy, it was what he disliked the most. I think he was because what was his name? He made elephants disappear, and I forget what his name was.
Not Houdini. No.
No, I forget his name, but he.
You guys like David Copperfield, but that was probably not. Okay.
Yeah, and David Copperfield made a lot more money at them than my
Oh yeah,
father.
big bucks.
Yeah, right. So anyway, and I was kind of addressing that back to this concept of the universal forces and universal intelligence, and the concept of something that is real, and that's what we're talking about, real things, but things that aren't necessarily visible. And I think that's what we need to look at, that something that's real but not necessarily visible. We look at the law of gravity. You can't see the law of gravity. You can't feel it, taste it, observe it. But you can observe the manifestations of the law of gravity. And I think that's what we're talking about in chiropractic here, demonstrating the manifestations of. And I was thinking about some of the things that we look at, that of course we have. There used to be a television program. I think George Papard played in it. It was a real television program. It was before the A-Team, where something disappeared, and like a train, and you'd go in a tunnel, and the train would be gone after try to come out of the tunnel, and obviously that was trick photography that they used.
All right.
Or what was the Bill Murray movie that with the Ghostbusters?
Oh, Ghostbusters. Yes.
Yeah. Those ghosts were not real, but they were that was trick photography too. But the concept was that these were real objects, but not true objects. It's not something that would be manifested to people.
Right.
So we have that whole concept here, and that's what we're looking at something when we talk about the innate intelligence of the body. You can't see it, you can't feel it, you can't taste it, but you can see manifestations of the innate intelligence of the body. When
Right.
we eat breakfast, we see the manifestation of the innate intelligence of the body because the body digests it, assimilates it, and makes it into a living human tissue.
I heard Reggie give an analogy once, talking about a battery. You know, if you cut open a battery, you don't see electricity in there, but you plug it into a radio, and all of a sudden now the radio works because there's electricity in that battery.
Yeah,
And
the
going back
electricity
to your point.
is something that's visible, but it's real. You know,
Yeah.
if you touch that battery in the wrong way, then
Right.
you see the effects of it.
You'll know it's
And,
there.
yeah, I used to have to worry about that when I had to jump start my car. with
Red and blue, don't mix them up.
Yeah, right. And so we have so many things like that that we recognize as being real, but not necessarily visible. Not necessarily we can touch or taste or feel. Not necessarily we can empirically look at. And I think the same thing is true in chiropractic. You know, we have something that's not necessarily visible and can't be demonstrated empirically. All we can demonstrate the manifestations of it in an empirical manner, but we can't manifest. We can't demonstrate the reality of it empirically. Right. And I think that's what's happening, whether it's the law of gravity or the innate intelligence of the body. We know that there is a difference between adjusting a living person and adjusting a dead person. Yeah. One has innate intelligence and one does not.
Right.
So that that principle is an absolute, and we say that granted that principle can be interfered with, and the manifestations of it can be less than 100%. And I think, unfortunately, many chiropractors are trying to demonstrate the manifestations of innate intelligence with their research and trying to prove chiropractic empirically by their research, but yet we know from principle that there is an innate intelligence. We may be able to demonstrate empirically whether we've corrected the subluxation by our technique, but we can't demonstrate that we have improved the expression of that innate intelligence, except by our chiropractic philosophy that says when we correct subluxation, whether we have or have not is not the issue. Is when we correct a vertebral subluxation, the innate intelligence of the body is expressing itself more fully between the brain and the spinal cord. And I think that's what we need to understand and recognize, and that's what our objective is in chiropractic. That's where our objective begins and ends in chiropractic, the expression of that innate intelligence within the body. Whether we can prove it, whether it's visible, it doesn't matter. It matters, and that's why so many chiropractors want to do research. To me, I don't need to do research. I'm of the opinion that the research was proved when D.D. Palmer gave that first adjustment to Harvey Lillard, and that proved chiropractic once and for all. Actually, chiropractic was proved when the first kid fell down, skinned his knee, and that knee healed itself. That proved that the body does have the ability to heal itself. All we say in chiropractic is do it a little bit better, do it a little more effectively if there's no interference in the nervous system.
And when you say that it was proved when Dee gave that first adjustment, you went on, but would someone maybe say, well, then that's because Harvey Lillard's hearing improved? Had his hearing not improved, would it not have proved chiropractic? So what do you?
if we had to look at chiropractic based upon the empirical results that occurred, Harvey Lillard, D.D. Palmer probably would have said, well, that was a good idea. Let me try something else, because it didn't work. Did that mean it didn't work? No, it may have worked, but
It did work. It did work in that sense, didn't it? Because his hearing improved.
Yeah, that demonstrates that his hearing improved. But if his hearing hadn't improved, or if it hadn't improved that day and improved the next day, we would have, if he hadn't looked at that hearing or tested that hearing the next day, he would have said, well, that didn't work, or I got to try something else. But it did work, obviously, and it worked. That hearing was restored. If we understand the philosophy, we say, yeah, that interference was removed exactly when the first adjustment took place. Now the adjustment took place, by when Harvey Lillard laid down on that table and the bone was put back in place and the interference was removed. The restoration took place.
Right.
It may have taken a day for it to occur, or a week, or it may have been something that was totally unable. That nerve was not able to carry those mental impulses between the hearing mechanism and wherever they were originated from. But that doesn't mean that chiropractic didn't work. It just means
yes.
you didn't see the manifestation of it. Just like, doesn't, if David Copperfield removed that curtain and the elephant was still there, you would say, well, David Copperfield failed. Well, in that sense, he failed because his objective was to remove to have the elephant disappear.
Right.
And the elephant did disappear. My father used to do tricks. And one trick was he would make a card, have a person pick out the card, and then he'd make the card say that I'm going to make this card appear back in the box. Well, he would have the person look at the deck of cards and say, the card, this is your card. Pull the card out and the card on the top. He says, "That's your card," and they'd say, "No, it isn't." And he'd be standing there and he's looking over it and he'd say, "Is that your?" He'd pull another card. "Is that your card?" They'd say, "No, that's not it." And he'd say, "Ah," he'd say, "That's really strange." And then he would lift his head and say, I don't know what happened. And there, stuck on the top of his head, would be the card that the person.
Right. I love it.
Yeah. And of course we got everybody got away. I saw him do it probably half a dozen times, and every time he did it right. He said one time he did it when the person pulled a card out, and that happened. They pulled out the wrong card. They pulled out the right card. It was the wrong one. But
that's funny.
So the point is that if we don't get results with chiropractic, we don't say the chiropractic failed. We say, well, chiropractor may have failed in removing the interference, but chiropractic didn't fail because chiropractic is not the job of chiropractic to get a person. And if they can't get well, maybe it's because of limitations of time, maybe it's because of limitations of matter, or maybe it's because of the limitations of the chiropractor technical skills, and that's what we need to work on.
Or of course, it's just that the symptoms caused by something that has nothing to do with the nervous system.
Exactly. Or that person is got limitations of matter. And
I know I knew what you were trying to say there, but I think for maybe someone who's just getting into the stuff, when you said that DD proved chiropractic with that first adjustment, you were not referring to the fact that Harvey's hearing went away or his hearing improved, just that he proved that this principle is a true principle at that time when he made that adjustment. It had nothing to do with Harvey Lillard's improvement or lack of improvement.
Right. If D.D. Palmer really had corrected the vertebral subluxation, restored the mental impulses, that's what his objective was to do.
Right.
And whether that was manifested or not, just like the baseball player who hits a baseball and it travels a certain distance. We measure the distance and we say, well, he was a great home run hitter, or he wasn't a home run hitter. But the law of gravity was still manifested perfectly in that the ball left the bat and
Right.
up and traveled a distance.
No matter where the ball goes.
Yes, and most of the time I hit balls. They didn't travel that far, but I tried to make up for that by running fast.
There you go.
But the law still went into effect. Every time I hit the ball, it went up, and the law of gravity caused it to come down somewhere. Unfortunately, too often it was somebody's glove.
Mine would go into the glove of the catcher every time.
Yeah, I used to like watching Pete Rose play, because he'd always stand there, and if he wasn't going to swing at the ball, he'd watch that ball go right all the way into the mitt. And I don't know what he was trying to prove there, but anyway, he was a great one.
Yeah.
And but we place our emphasis upon probably the wrong thing when we look. We try to measure whether an individual gets well or not under chiropractic care. We try to measure how far that ball travels,
Mm-hmm.
And we use trick photography if we try to prove that the individual got this or that, whether there's really ghosts or not.
Yeah.
But we all look at and put our emphasis upon the principles, and I think that's what we do. And people live their whole lives like that. No one has ever seen an innate intelligence, but people recognize that there's an innate intelligence, and they live their lives based upon that concept. Every time they eat breakfast or in their knee, they acknowledge the fact that there's an innate intelligence within the body that's going to do the healing. Every time you hit a baseball, you recognize that the attraction of masses, whether it's a baseball of the earth or that law of gravity is going to be manifested, whether it goes 300 feet or 500 feet or just to somebody in the infield.
Or in the catcher's glove.
Right. So
I think of talking about innate intelligence here again, and how we know it exists. A tree is a great example. You can do this without getting in much trouble. You cut a tree and it's like there's just nothing there. It's amazing to think that there's somehow life flowing through this thing, but you can't see it. There's nothing in there. It's just wood, and it's just a simple one, but maybe an easy one to think about versus thinking of cutting open a human being, which is maybe a little bit for some people to think about that. But it's amazing that it's in there. We know it is. And get into your point of how we focus on the principle here. I think that's a great source of frustration for a lot of chiropractors, where when they're focusing on the result or on making the symptom go away, there's a great source of frustration, because sometimes it happens, a lot of times it doesn't. And there's that frustration. Well, how come it doesn't always make that pain go away or that headache go away? And we get frustrated, and then we start slipping more. So we start trying to use other methods to make symptoms go away, versus when we realize we're so fortunate that we have a profession built on a philosophy, a truth, and we focus on that. Well, now the frustration goes away. We can become more focused on what we're doing and become better chiropractors. So it's so important that, like you were saying there, that we put our emphasis on the principle versus the outcomes that might happen.
Mhm. I wrote an article once, talked about what I think was the greatest professional basketball team in history. Um, it happened to be from Philadelphia.
Of course.
The 1967 76ers, who had Dr. J, and see, they even had a doctor on the team,
There you go.
and a lot of other good basketball players, and they won the NBA championship, but because their focus was on the objective, and they knew what their objective was. It wasn't to get sneaker, uh,
Deals or yeah.
yeah, right, or get glory. It was to win basketball games, and they had their focus on the objective, and they ended up becoming a great team because of that. Uh, and I think that we as chiropractors need to put our focus on the objective
Yeah.
and recognize that now there's a situation in chiropractic where if we can't fulfill that objective because of limitations of our own, or if the limitation is in our ability to correct subluxation, then we need to refer that person out to another chiropractor. And I was fortunate in my practice in my later years. I had had a few other chiropractors in the office. I'd say to the practice member, well, why don't you have Dr. Judy or Dr. Claude check your spine uh, a few times and see if he or she can correct this subluxation, where because of my limitations I've not been able to do it. And then the limitations may be within the body itself, and limitations of, we have principles in chiropractic that say limitations of time and limitations of matter, and
Right.
and that those are limitations that we perhaps can't do something to do anything about. The uniqueness is that we have the ability to say to an individual, allow them to make the choice as to whether they want to have somebody else address the limitations of time or the limitations of matter. Um, and that's why we should give people the option to do something else. Not that they don't have to have subluxations corrected; they need that too.
Right.
And Judy just wrote an article in the Sherman publication that said, I think the title of the article last week. In fact, I had to call her on the phone and tell her I thought it was a good article, and that she appreciated getting a call of congratulations from her mentor, even though that she doesn't need me as a mentor anymore. I thought it was a good article, and what she said is everybody, and I think she had that emphasis on the word body. Everybody needs chiropractic care, and that was the essence of what she was saying. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter who else you're going to. It doesn't have limitations of time or limitations of matter. You need to have a good nerve supply, and that's the emphasis that
Yeah.
we have, and we recognize that we need to sometimes explain to people that they may need to do something else in addition to chiropractic care. They still need chiropractic care, and we're the only people who are able to do that. We're the only people who have that as a professional objective to move that interference to the expression of the innate intelligence of the body,
Yeah.
and that's what we've been doing since Harvey did whatever he did uh,
Yeah.
in those days. But and we assume he corrected a subluxation, even though he may not have used the same technique as us. He may not even used a great technique at the time. And I guess we can be thankful that he corrected the subluxation,
Yep.
because there's so many chiropractors today who are uh, practice because of that, and are improving upon their skills. I was speaking on to a couple of chiropractors yesterday who who one particularly who teaches a technique, and and he he's emphasized to chiropractors how well they do their technique and how well they perform their technique, how well they accomplish their objective. And he's got a technique that helps chiropractors to effectively correct subluxations and achieve their objective. But he knows that once he makes that objective correction, that he's done everything he can do, and he just steps back and says, now, and in fact, he even mentioned that another fellow that both of us know, who says that I watch the intelligence of the body after I correct the subluxation, and step back and do that. That's all I can do is step back and watch that take place. In fact, we know that actually the body makes the adjustment. We just introduce an intelligent force, hopefully intelligent force. And some chiropractors, I may question the quality of their intelligent forces, but then some people may have questioned the quality of my
Wow.
forces from that time's practice. But
I think like you're mentioning with Judy's article there too, it's how every body needs chiropractic. And I think what I love about chiropractic again is it's such a simple concept, but at the same time, I think a lot of chiropractors take that for granted, and they think that they've maybe heard it once or twice, or maybe they read a little bit here or there, and they think they've got it. And I see this mistake happening all the time when I help young wrestlers. I help at the high school, and I'm teaching guys technique, and I'll show them a double leg takedown. And when you break it down, it's a relatively simple move. There's not a whole lot to it. And you can get okay at it relatively quick. But if you want to be great at it, you've got to be willing to continue to get in there and repeat those steps over and over and over and over and over and over again until you got just fine-tuned. So in chiropractic, I think we have the same problem where it's very easy to get a very, maybe elementary understanding of chiropractic, but to really know it so that you live it, you breathe it, and all these things we're talking about, it takes a lifetime of study. And what I tell my wrestlers is that to be successful in life, you have to be okay with the boredom that comes along with being successful. And I don't think chiropractic philosophy is boring at all. But I think some chiropractors get that, where they're like, oh, I got this, move on to the next thing.
yeah,
Give me something new. It's like, no. There's a lot in here. Trust me, there's a lot of stuff. It's almost like, you read the Bible and you read maybe a chapter or a verse, and you read the thing 10 times. Every time you get something new out of it. And I think our philosophy is a bit like that, where you keep reading this stuff and you get a deeper understanding. And so that allows us then to be able to communicate this message better. So I think we have to be careful of that as chiropractors, not to think that we've got it all figured out.
yeah. In fact, I learn things all the time, even as I'm preparing for talks or preparing information and reading that stuff. And I think that that's important that we do that. And it only comes by repetition. That's why you have to practice wrestling, because you got to do those things over and over again until they become second nature to you. And I think that we have to do that in chiropractic practice, and that's part of what the philosophy is. It teaches, it reinforces in our mind what we're doing and what our objective is and what our limitations are, and makes us better chiropractors. And that's why you have to go to wrestling practice and to deep do it till it becomes second nature to you. I think it was the goalie for the Flyers, Ken Dryden, who talked about muscle memory,
Right.
and doing things that become just automatic to you. And I've watched a lot of good wrestlers over the years, and these guys, it was like automatic to them, and that's why they could let a guy escape on them, and then they had enough confidence, and they knew exactly what they're doing. They knew they could take them down again and score more points than just letting him escape. And I think that we as chiropractors need to do that. We need to almost tell ourselves every day, I'm not doing the healing. The body's doing the healing.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe that's one of the basic principles that we should have in chiropractic is that the body heals itself, and the body does the healing. It's not us that do it, and we can
But I
do it
think,
all best as we can, as well as we can, and we should.
yeah.
But we also need to have that philosophy in mind that
Yeah.
we know. And
I think if you think about it from, again, maybe like a wrestling context, you could have a lot of people who, after maybe a week of training, they could demonstrate a double leg takedown, like show you, okay, here's the steps, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. But then if you put them in a real situation, there's no way possible they're going to do it effectively. And in chiropractic, we have a lot of chiropractors who could probably take a multiple choice answer or a test and get all the answers right about innate intelligence and what our objective might be. But then when it's for real and they're standing there in front of a person, they can't, the words can't come out because they haven't rehearsed it enough. And so we have to get from that point where, yes, intellectually we know some of these things, but they're not really coming out of us, exuding from us like they do from someone like yourself, where in any situation it just comes out and it's just second nature. So we want to move from that stage to where when things are for real, we're able to have the words that we want to, the proper words to get the right message across to people. And that's, again, why we have these messages here. And so I'm just so grateful. I can't tell you how grateful I am that you're willing to take the time every other week to do this and to share your knowledge and get this message out there, because it's a message worth sharing. So I greatly appreciate it. And we'll just keep plugging along, and next time we'll get the principle 8 but this is how we need to do these things. We don't want to, I know you always joke about us not getting through these things ever, but this is the way to do it, because we want to have, hey, let's just take some time. There's no rush. Let's really make sure we get into each of these and not gloss over them and give them the thought they require so that they do start to come out from us like that. So thank you so much.
Right. Okay. Well, I guess we'll close it off there. I can just tell you one thing. My students, I'm really big on repetition.
Yeah.
And maybe that comes from my wrestling background, that we had to do that. We do double leg takedowns all half the practice before so it became automatic to us. And I think that's what it should be in understanding our chiropractic philosophy. And that's why I always love questions, because when a question means student is not understanding something. But I used to have students in class, they'd say, we already heard that before. And I said, you're going to hear it again. The same students who would say, oh, we've heard that before, they'd go out and get in their car and pop in a Grateful Dead CD and listen to it for the 50th time.
Yeah.
And then they if I'm going to repeat the same thing in chiropractic twice on them, they get upset at me doing that. And so that's why I said, repetition is a good teacher.
Yes.
As long as you're learning it right,
Yes.
You can repeat the same takedown move incorrectly, and unfortunately gets ground into your mind and do it incorrectly. And that's why we have coaches.
Yeah. All right. That's why we have you. You're in your head properly. Awesome.